Okay, welcome. This is officially podcast number one. I'm super excited and a little nervous, but since it's number one, I actually wanted to start out with something super important, which is story. So I'm going to tell you my story. I'm going to tell you how I got to this point in time and doing this, what I am doing today. But then I also want to talk to you about the architecture of a story and kind of why stories work. So, first, let me start out with my story. So, way back in the year 2009, I really thought I was at the peak of everything I was ever going to do. I was a vice president at NBC here in Los Angeles. I had a very large team reporting to me. I had done everything I was supposed to. So I started out in an affiliate in San Antonio, Texas, and then I was recruited, San Antonio, where I'm from, whoop, whoop. And then I was recruited to the NBC local media division and worked first in Philadelphia and took the station there. Hadn't been number one in that market for 30 years. We got that to number one within 2.5 years. So then I moved to Chicago. They had lost their number one position 5 years prior, and we got them to number one within 1 year. And so then I was moved to Los Angeles, and they had recently lost their number one position. We got them back to number one, and like everything was just on fire for me. When I moved to LA, I also had a great team, and I started being able to do some bigger things. I was part of a national team that was reconceiving, entirely how we went to market on the internet. And I also was able to launch a daily user-generated content show, the first daily 100% user-generated content show in the country. We went up against Oprah every single day. It was just a good time. I was also at I was kind of the chair of NBC's Hispanic affiliation or affinity group, the Hispanic Forum. So I had even gotten to the point where I had been able to dine with two of our chairmen of GE. GE owned NBC at the time. So I had dined with Jack Welch. I had dined with Jeff Immelt. It was a big deal. I had even gone to the leadership program. So things were flying high, right? And so what would be the next logical progression of what I wanted to have happen in my career? Well, the next logical progression would have been for me to become a president and general manager of a television station. I knew that once I could become president and general manager, I'd be at an even higher level of executive band within NBC and GE, bigger compensation, and I'd be kind of made. I'd have my own P&L. I mean, that was really sort of the pinnacle. The thing that concerned me a little bit is, we had 10 owned and operated stations at the time. And so there would have been a lot of competition for those next 10, for any one of those 10 positions when they became vacant. And, most people didn't know that I had been like a self-taught marketer. I actually started in research and then I moved over to marketing, but I hadn't had any formal training. And so I thought, well, I'll go get my MBA. And so I applied and was accepted to USC's executive MBA program, which was awesome. And even better, I had NBC agreed to pay a sizable chunk of the very pricey tuition. So things were really looking good, and I was looking for a change. I mean, the reality of why I went to the MBA program is I was looking to kind of reinvent myself. I wanted an even bigger executive presence. And I thought this is what it's going to be to sort of get me there and give me the edge. And to be honest, I was also a little bit bored with what I had been doing. Granted, I had moved up very quickly, but I had sort of done the same job at like station by station by station, and it just wasn't fulfilling me the same way it would. So I was looking for a change. Here's the problem. Sounds awesome, but I told you where the story starts in 2009. The problem was that the economy was turning at that time. Advertising had started to shrink. Most people don't know this, but the biggest advertiser on television is automotive dealers and automotive companies. And in 2008 and 2009, there just simply weren't a lot of people buying cars, right? Because they didn't have any money, they didn't have jobs, right? So when people stopped buying cars, television, automotive companies and auto dealers stop advertising because it's just expense out. So, here I was sitting because of all of my moves in one of the highest paid marketing VP positions in the company. But at the same time, advertising is like just going straight down. Money isn't coming into the company as much, and things were getting difficult. Like all the signs, all the warning signals were starting to go off, like this could not be good. And in 2000, I think in September, October of 2009, what I had been waiting for happened. I had to lay off like over 30 people on my team, which was super depressing. And basically what happened after that is as soon as I had done all of that dirty work, my general manager called me up to his office and let me know that I was being pink slipped as well. So here I had gone from this, fantastic job that made me feel really great. I had vice president on my card. It had the beautiful peacock. I was able to do all of these things, to not having that anymore, not having the security, and basically being unemployed. It was a huge bruise to my ego. And here I found myself like, yes, I was going to have to do that reinvention after all. It just wasn't the way that I had thought that it was going to be. So in 2009, at the very end of 2009, I started to stick my shingle out as a solo consultant. Now, mind you, what would have been happening at that time? Lots of people were being laid off. So I learned a few things really quickly. Number one, the only thing I really knew how to market and had practical experience marketing up to that point was television and television shows. Number two, I was also competing against an army of other unemployed, overqualified, amply educated, newly minted consultants that were out on the streets the same as I was. And number three, I didn't even really know how to price strategy. Strategy is one of these weird things that you can't see, but they're really important. So I didn't even know, like, what am I supposed to be charging for this? Luckily, I stayed in the MBA program and got through it. And I was starting to actually take my very first marketing classes of my life, having already been a VP, but now also being unemployed in marketing. And I was starting to learn about like frameworks and how you can apply like these different thinking frameworks in business. Had they been from McKinsey or Porter's 5 Forces, like how frameworks apply to business. Super cool. Also, little by little, I started to get some clients. The challenge that I was having is that every client was different. I mean, I had like a beverage client. I had a fast food Chinese restaurant client. I had a manufacturing client. I had automotive insurance. And every single one of these engagements that I had, I approached with absolute trepidation that I had never marketed this type of product or service before. I wasn't sure I was doing the right thing. And so what I would do is I would spend like countless unbilled hours just learning and learning and learning about that industry and learning about that specific company, so that my knowledge, when I talked to them and I kind of was putting together my strategies, would just be absolutely unassailable. Right? I mean, that was my idea, is like, if I just pack so much knowledge and get so much into me, I've got to be able to find the right answer. But man, it tore me up every time. So time moves on, I start getting better and better at it, but I would still have this trepidation every time I would get a new type of client, like, oh my God, I haven't done that before. Am I going to be able to pull this off? And then not too long ago, a couple of years ago, I was on a flight from Rotterdam back to Los Angeles after being at a business conference. And I was working on strategy for a client. And I was sitting there thinking like, oh, here I go again. I'm going to have to try to learn this whole thing. I'm like, what have I done in the past? I'm like, I know I've done great strategies, and clients have all been, pretty pretty pleased with the results that I gave them. So like, what is it that I did? And then it clicked. Like it literally almost happened like a snap of my fingers. I realized that there had been a pattern to all of the strategies that I had developed for these clients, and kind of what made them successful. They all had the same elements. And I started thinking like, well, wait a minute, let me look at marketing strategies that I haven't done. Other people's marketing strategies, are they the same for other companies? And I started to realize, yeah, every single one of these marketing strategies, what had made those particular strategies successful when executed is they had like kind of all of the same elements in them. And so I was like, okay, how can I put these together? And I realized if I could actually do these 9 elements in the right order, the strategy started to it just started to come together like a jigsaw puzzle. And once I got what that jigsaw puzzle was, I could like write strategies super quickly. There wasn't any need to spend weeks, and sometimes with some companies, months developing like phone book sized strategies. Sometimes I would come in, to companies after they had like very prestigious management consulting companies who would leave them, this gigantic strategy that is like beautiful to hold and kind of show off, but like awful to read because it's so dense. And they would just sit there and collect dust and, on the cabinet of somebody's office and somebody's file cabinet. And so what I started to realize is that the things that held these strategies together really wasn't about doing all of that like crazy, massively time-consuming learning. It wasn't about learning a particular industry. It was really about learning about their customers, right? If I could understand these companies' customers and figure out how those customers' needs aligned to my client's value proposition, everything started to come together. And then what I would know is we would know what story we needed to communicate to those customers in a way that they would actually, first of all, recognize that they were being communicated to, and secondly, understand, kind of what the next action was for them to take. And the result was the marketing canvas. And those are the 9 basically elements. So I developed this marketing canvas. I developed it for myself so that I would have the blueprint every time I went to do a strategy. But, time after time, from massive kind of multi-billions and billions of dollar revenue companies that I've worked with down to all these startups, if I use this canvas and follow these 9 steps in the right order, I've kind of been successful in developing these airtight strategies. And so what I realized in the end was that when you develop the strategy, you do it a little bit quicker. I also would output it to a 1-page strategy document. So I use the canvas to develop a 1-page strategy document. And these strategy documents, I'll show them to you later. They're so simple and elegant, but so like jam-packed with what you need to know that they're easy to kind of pin up on the wall. My clients know what their strategy is. Their teams have the 1-page strategy and everybody's on the same page. And so what happened in the end is that, I found this methodology, this framework that I could not only apply a lot more easily and not really have to worry about all of that, kind of time that I had been spending before. But I think more importantly, I was able to kind of approach every client, no matter what they're doing, with like the certainty that I just need to follow these steps. Like I didn't have that like awful, feeling in the pit of my stomach every time I would kind of go into a new client engagement. And so that was completely liberating, right? And now that I've got this kind of canvas, I have the map of what I would need to do with every client. And the cool thing is, so do you, basically. But what I really want to key in on right now is what I did just now is I told you kind of the story of how I developed this. And story is such an important part of how you communicate to customers. In fact, it's number 4. Those 9 elements I was talking about, your story is number 4. And so what I want to try to do is, one of the things I geek out on like hugely is Joseph Campbell and the hero's story. If you've seen Star Wars, if you have seen The Lord of the Rings, you have seen the hero story in action. In fact, stories are how humans communicate. And stories are how brands communicate too. The problem is sometimes brands don't try to figure out what the story actually is. And here's a hint. It's not the brand's story. It's really, who is your customer? What is the story they're involved in? and how do you kind of help them along their journey, their hero's journey. So what I want to share with you now is, and I'm going to try to do a little bit of technology. Let's see if I can pull it up. I'm going to try to show you my iPad, where I'm going to kind of draw you the hero's journey and how story really works. So, okay, here we go. Let me see. Will it work? I guess I got to turn it on. Okay. Yes. Okay. All right. So this should be fun. I'm going to try to show you kind of like, this is how the hero's journey actually works. So here, this is the world, right? And what you have up here is you've got your hero, and there he is. He's like, oh, is that his arm? Whatever, his staff, okay? And he's ready to go on his journey. And this is kind of the beginning of the journey, because we're going to come full around. And so basically, every hero, same way I did, like I was on, going through my normal life, thinking I really understood what I was trying to get to. I was trying to get, right? This was, my little thought bubble, like someday I'm going to be a GM and I'm going to be standing at the top of the mountain and I'm going to plant my flag and life is going to be beautiful. And then something happened, and this happens over and over to all of us all the time. But usually some of us have a very predominant story. Something happened, and sooner or later, basically, I hit a wall. And that wall for me was that the economy shrank and I started to lose, I lost my job, basically. And so you cruise along on your story, and then what happens is the call to an adventure happened. Now, most of the time that call, by the way, is an unwanted call, which mine was too, which is like, hey, we're letting you go, choose a new adventure, okay? But something happens that kind of puts you into a new reality. And then you start proceeding down, and I'm looking at some of my cheat notes here. And usually then you have some sort of mentor that is helping you through in some way, shape, or form. So here's you still, kind of you're on your journey. There's your little thing. And somebody else, enters, and, they're like, they're your mentor that's going to help you kind of get through this journey. And what happens though is when you're trying to get through this, all of these problems happen, right? Or trials, right? And with me, it was like, I don't know how much to charge. There's tons of other unemployed people trying to get the same jobs I'm trying to get. Nobody has any money to give. I've never done this before, et cetera, et cetera. And, I didn't tell you the best part. Then at some point you hit the pit of despair, right? So you're going through these trials, these things are happening. So my pit of despair was, I think, for the year 2010, which is my first year solo consulting. I'm going to decline that. Let's see if I can get my screen back. That was exciting. Okay, so my first year of solo consulting, basically I made a grand total of $24,000. This is after having been like a big shot at NBC. This was like, oh my God, you've got to be kidding me. But what happens is you keep coming around, and you start learning things, and you start getting new experience, and all of that like struggling kind of starts to give you strength, right? So let's talk about the world in two ways. And so you start like flexing your muscles, you start kind of learning some things. And then sooner or later, what happens is you get sort of, these gifts, for me, and while you're doing this, you get new powers, right? You're getting things, you're getting new powers, then you get like some gift. For me, it was like figuring out the marketing canvas. I mean, it truly like, it happened in a way that felt like channeled from the gods. I was like, ta-da! I get it. This is what I have to do. And it's been like, it's worked every single time. But the really cool thing is that when you start coming back around, what you're able to do, and you kind of, return to the world after your struggle, first of all, you return as like a new person. You're completely transformed. Hold on. Let's make sure I'm still on. I am. Okay. You're completely transformed. And what you get to do then is you actually get to, first you realize like that was the mountain I was supposed to climb, right? Here's me with my flag. That was the mountain I was supposed to climb. But what you have that's really kind of cooler is you actually get to share how to get to the top of the mountain map with other people. And then you've made it. And so this journey is basically, hopefully you can see it, this journey is the hero's journey. And the journey is a framework that you can use to help figure out what is my client's hero's journey, right? Like what are my customers? What journey are they on? What is the trial that they're trying to go through? In this case, I'm going to change my little color here. You, this is you, are the mentor. Your customer is the hero. So, what I wanted you to get was that, first of all, I told you my story in this structure, right? Secondly, this structure is the journey. It's the journey of every single story, right? It's the journey that's been told for like centuries. It's how we have gained knowledge over and over the years. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. In my very first podcast, I wanted to share with you my story, and I also wanted to share with you why stories are important. Stop sharing that. If you want my little hand scratchy drawing, I will turn this into a PDF, and I will share it with you. But here's what I would love if you would do. First of all, follow me, Ginger Zumeta HQ on Facebook. Not just my Ginger Zumeta profile, but please go to Facebook and follow me at Ginger Zumeta HQ. That's where I'm going to be sharing all of this stuff with you. And get my podcast, right? Like this is the very first recording. I'm going to be setting it up at usablemarketingpodcast.com. So please go take a look at that and download it. And I'm going to have stuff that I'm going to be sharing with you daily. So thank you so much. And until that was episode 1, and looking forward to episode 2. Bye.